Okay, so somewhere over there, past all the fog, is the goal. So that road, the road to big dreams, is filled with a lot of ups and downs. My dreams started with a lot of downs. Stories were my escape and my comfort from all the challenges of my childhood. It felt like there, anything was possible and I was safe from the things that I was running away from. And as a result of that, very quickly, spending time in these worlds, first through reading and watching and playing, but eventually through writing, became really important to me. Then in college, in the middle of a quarter-life crisis, which let's not do the math on that, I decided I wanted to focus on building a career telling stories. I wanted to tell the same kind of imaginative sci-fi and fantasy stories that helped me get through the hardest parts of my life. And so the goal was set, and I decided to drop out of school. I had a vague idea of the path I wanted to walk. I knew more or less the direction I wanted to go, even if I didn't know what it would take to really get there. I just needed to go do it. And so that's what I did. And that was, 11 years ago. So what happened? I messed up a lot. I failed a lot. And slowly I started to weigh myself down with these failures. So I'm gonna use this weight jacket to represent all the ways in which I feel like I've failed. Alone, they're not that heavy. And each of these little weight pouches is gonna be one failure. The first is that I did my first successful Kickstarter more than a decade ago. It's like 13 years ago at this point. It took me 2 years from 2011 when I funded it to 2013 to actually fulfill it. Now, that's a successful project, but the process of fulfilling it, the issues along the way, losing the artist that I had on it, needing to find another artist after the Kickstarter was funded, even though the comic turned out okay and everything was delivered, it caused me to lose a lot of confidence. And I let myself give up the momentum. After that, it took me 2 more years to get another comic out. I put money aside, I financed my comic independently. When I finally made that comic, I didn't put my full backing behind it. I only used it to network and give to other professionals and other fellow creators at conventions. I didn't table, I didn't try to sell it to an audience. I had a reason and logic and a strategy for all of that, but really now looking back, it's so apparent to me that it was just doubt. I had doubt and a lack of confidence that had taken root in me that was keeping me from really putting myself forward. By that time, a few years in, I had clear ideas on how I wanted to manage my career, but I always had a problem managing scope. The more time passed and the further behind I started to feel, the more I wanted to make sure that my next project was gonna be big enough or right enough to get me back on track, to get me to make the kind of progress that I had been lacking. But because I wasn't managing scope well, or because I was feeling that more strongly than I was respecting the fact that I should just be getting anything done, no matter how small, I let them get too big to the point where they were too expensive for me to finance or finish independently, which just slowed me down even more. Then at a certain point, I really needed to start making ends meet. I wasn't making money from my writing. It was gonna take a long time to start making money from my writing based off the plans that I had. And so I needed to find another way to fill my wallet, to be able to eat and live and all those, side basics outside of fulfilling your creative passion. And that's totally normal and totally reasonable, and that's not a failure. The failure was that I wasn't specific enough or intentional enough with how I was gonna balance my time between those responsibilities and needs. I was not careful about deciding what to take on and what to pursue. I was just scrambling for any kind of foothold, exploring every project that I thought could help carry me forward, to the point that I let it distract me from the writing that was meant to be at the center of it all. I think I did a lot of good work in the pursuit of those other projects. I started consulting and marketing based off some work in social media that I had been doing, which taught me a ton of valuable skills. I started a website and a podcast about the business of comics based off what I had been learning, which led me to form a lot of really great relationships, learn a lot more about the industry, hopefully help a lot of people who use the resources on the website and that podcast. But at each step, I was kind of holding myself back. I never monetized that podcast and website because I felt uncomfortable doing so as long as I hadn't succeeded in my career. And over time, more opportunities came about, which in some ways pulled me more away. I started translating comics, which was an awesome opportunity. And since then, I've translated over 100 titles. Comics I've translated have been nominated for Eisner's a couple times and some other awards. And that allowed me to feel like I was a part of the comic book industry again, even when my own creative ambitions really slowed down. But man, each and every one of those opportunities led to more years and time lost where I just wasn't focused. And individually, none of those things is that heavy, but taken together, when you're looking back at it all, it starts to feel like a lot. It's already gonna be hard to make it to where I wanna go. How the hell am I gonna make it carrying all of this when I'm struggling with the weight I already have to carry? At that point in my career, even after all that weight had been added, I still kept going. I didn't let that stop me. I decided to double down, and I did my best to learn to balance my freelance work with my writing and learn from the mistakes that I feel like I had made already, and just tried to refocus and realign myself on what my goals actually were. And the surprising thing is that it actually worked. In 2022, 9 years after I dropped out, I reached the peak of my creative career so far. In that same year, I sold my graphic novel, I sold a feature film, and I got a full-time job writing for a AAA video game, Star Citizen. That's pretty freaking amazing. I know not a lot of people ever get to make one of those things happen, much less find that kind of success across 3 different mediums. And then in the same year, man, it felt like I had the best wind behind me. Like it felt like I had the wind in my back in the best way. And everything felt like it was headed in the right direction. It felt like finally all my hard work was paying off. I knew this career would take a long time. And here I was being proven that 9 years of effort, and finally I was starting to make the kind of headway that I wanted. So cut to January 2024, in the worst 48-hour period of my life, of my professional life for sure, where I found out I was getting laid off, and the next day I learned that my comic was getting canceled halfway through production. It finally just got to be too heavy for me. This weight, the weight I had inside of me, all of it, it was just more than I could deal with. I know life is way too short to not go after what you want. With so much weighing me down, it feels really hard to believe that I am gonna make it. It felt really hard to believe that I'm gonna make it. And it kind of still does in some ways. It just makes me feel like I'm kind of drowning sometimes in the weight of the past. Like there's so much life to hold in your head and cognition that you just can't. And it makes anything new tough to even imagine or undertake. And so all this heavy crap slowing me down, I can't let it, right? Like I need to lighten the load. And I've known that for a long time, and I've been trying to work through it all. Work through all the different parts of me that are contributing to that and rectify the actual circumstances that are contributing to that. But yeah, that's complicated too. Unfortunately, this isn't exactly solved yet. Will it ever be? Who knows? Therapy helps. Therapy helps a lot. I feel like this is the moment in the video where you'd have a BetterHelp ad if I had ads or sponsors or anything. But yeah, even therapy is not like just an easy fix, right? Yeah, an hour a week, great. But there's so much more work that goes in, or at least for me, I've been putting so much more time into it, and it's helpful, and I wouldn't stop it, and I would recommend it to anyone who thinks they could benefit from it. Whenever I work through something in therapy, it feels like there's always another thing to unpack after. We talk about my physical health and my feelings around that and the way I beat myself up about it. And then we talk about the chronic fatigue that I struggle with and the difficulties with my depression, which is more severe than I realize. And we talk about not wanting to be a burden to my partner because of how hard it is to carry all of these feelings. And we talk about being older and feeling like I'm less exciting for people to follow as a writer or even make friends with as a person. And there's just this like pressure and panic that builds up with the weight of all of these things as you realize that life is short and only getting shorter. And as far as I know, we only have this one life. And what's the point of anything if it's all just going to end? And all of that just builds more and more weight on top. Wait, I think that's it. There is always going to be new weight. Life is always going to add new weight to the pile. And there's only ever going to be less time to do the things that I want to accomplish. And yes, that is a very depressing and intimidating thought. It helps to show that the key isn't removing the weight, but getting strong enough to bear it. And the nice thing when you're carrying weight like that is you get a little bit stronger every day just by carrying it. You just keep walking. You keep doing it. You throw the weight back on like I'm gonna do. And you just keep going. We're gonna walk. We're gonna suck up the tiredness and suck up the hurt and the soreness that I know is gonna come. And we're gonna build the strength. What's the other choice? I don't think there is one really. Backpack on. Oh, all right, let's make it happen. So that's the big secret. Instead of focusing on trying to remove the weight, focus on getting strong enough to bear it. And yeah, that seems obvious in hindsight, but I feel like most things do. And being aware of an idea or hearing it here is not the same as actually putting it into practice. So how do you actually build that strength? First, only take what you can carry. You don't have to hold yourself to some arbitrary standard of how strong you think you're supposed to be or should be or need to be. Where does any of that really come from? If you're taking more than you can carry, you're not actually gonna get stronger. You're just gonna hurt yourself. Second, you do not have to do it alone. You can rely on people. And if you don't have people around you who you feel like you can rely on, reach out to a therapist, find communities online, ask yourself if they've shown you that you can't rely on them or if you're just assuming that. And if you really are on your own, whether that's by choice or otherwise, you can still do it. You're still here. And as long as you're here, it's not too late. And even though a lot of the time we might think of ourselves as our own worst enemy, we are not. We are our greatest ally. You are not the destructive thoughts inside your head. You are so much more than that, and you can be your greatest ally. You just might have to learn how to be. And finally, it is okay to slow down. It is okay to take breaks. It is okay to sit at the bench and not do this while walking. You do not need to be strong all of the time. You cannot be strong all of the time. That is completely unrealistic. Do I wish that I was stronger now? Yes, obviously, but I'm not. I am who I am right now. I'm struggling to carry the weight I've already got on me, much less adding these extra 10 pounds. And I'm far from the person I want to be, but I think we're always gonna be like that. I think at least for a long time. I'm ready for that to be my mindset. And it's gonna take me a long time to reach my goals, to get to where I want to get to. I don't know how long the path ahead is, but I'm gonna keep walking the trail. I'm gonna keep going a little bit today, maybe more the next day, on and on and on, until I get strong enough to go anywhere I wanna go. My YouTube channel here is a great example. I've been on and off YouTube since 2010, and now I am starting over again. And I'd hoped that by now I'd have a channel where I could share all the wins in my career, but I don't. I have this video, and maybe I've got you, somebody on the other side of this who feels the same way that I feel about everything I've been talking about. And if that is you, I'm gonna be a little shameless and ask you to subscribe, because everything I'm doing, from making this video to the other videos I have planned to writing the stories and making the games that I'm working on, I'm not doing it for my own sake. If I was, I wouldn't worry about publishing. I wouldn't worry about trying to communicate. I'm making this for you, for us. It's kind of scary. It's very scary, honestly. I know that I could keep trying this hard and I could put all this work in, and no matter how hard I try in another 5 or 10 years, I could look back and I could feel just as stuck or just as dissatisfied with the results of the work that I've put in. I'm not a brave person by default, I don't think. You can't be brave without some amount of fear to overcome. So maybe I will grow into that. Maybe I'll grow into everything I could wish for and more. And maybe you will too. I certainly hope you do. If you try and trust yourself in the way that I've been talking about, then maybe someday we'll be strong enough to go anywhere we want. No matter how long the road is, no matter what unknown obstacles we come across, we can make it. You can make it.